Boom. All right, phase 1 in Season of Discovery is pretty much wrapped up, and we're coming at you today with a big boy DPS spec tier list.
Oh, that's my cue. This video is going to be based off all the DPS specs inside of the Season of Discovery, including their damage overall, their group utility, and just the overall fun, man.
We're also going to be doing a deep dive tier list for phase 2 when all the runes and class changes come out, so be on the lookout for that as well. But until then, this is what we're going with. Grab a cup of coffee. Let's jump right into it. All right, man, starting it off, we got Feral Druid. Lance, what are we thinking with Feral Druid? What's going on right now? Because it seems like they gotta be high up on this list, right?
I think Feral easily has to be put in the S tier. They're pretty much required for every group, just based off wild strikes alone. And then you put very respectable damage, very easy rotation. Literally, a caveman can do it.
I mean, they're gonna get so versatile even heading in the next phase because you get the Heart of the Wild talent that increases your stats in any form that you're in, whether it be bear form, you know, regular human form, or in your cat form as well. So, like, the versatility right now is high, but it's going to get even crazier next phase. But I will say, I would love for there to be some sort of mix-up with their rotation, because right now it's very, very stiff. It seems like all you do is cast Mangle, and you Savage Roar, and that's about it. Anything else seems like a waste of time, because Rip doesn't really deal enough damage. Your Shred doesn't deal enough damage. It's too much energy cost. Your Mangle still hits harder than Shred right now. I don't know. I think next phase, I really hope they do something to implement either a different combo point finisher, or give me a reason to use other combo point finishers, or a reason to use my bleeds. Maybe in a way it like gives me energy back each time a bleed hits. I don't know, something like that. But overall, Feral is just way too strong right now. You got Wild Strikes, you got Rebirth, you got Mark of the Wild, all these really good things. That's why I agree with Lance on this one. It has got to go in the S tier without a doubt. It is one of the best classes, if not the best class specs in the entire game.
I would say, to speak on your point of next phase, you are going to have things like the Crowd Pummeler coming in from Nomergan. The Wolf's Head Helm for power shifting. That's going to change things a lot. It's going to make it a lot less static than it is now, because you'll get to power shift in and out.
I agree.
I think Feral's only going to get better and stronger, and we haven't even seen their true power yet. Imagine once they get an item that's literally their bis head for going into TBC at level 40 or 50 whenever they allow us to get it.
It is, and now that you mention power shifting, it is going to be interesting to see if they're going to take the option of getting Leader of the Pack for raid, or if grabbing Furrer, where you get instant energy in the restoration tree, is going to be, you know, what's going to be better there? Is there going to be an option, or is just Leader of the Pack going to be mandatory? I don't know, but overall, they're in a really good spot. Moving on, we got Survival Melee Hunter, brand new spec coming into Season of Discovery. Everyone was asking about it for Classic Plus. It is here. This is actually Lance's main spec, so I'm going to lead it off to him. What do you think about Melee Hunter? I know they've been getting nerfed. Talk a little bit about from launch to right now. What's been going on?
Oh, the Blizzard made that buff to fix Flanking Strike, or not buff it, but fixed it to where it was doing what it was supposed to be doing. Not the top Hunter spec by any means right now, but it feels really nice when you have Wild Strikes and all these other melee buffs that you get in a raid, and pop off these big 300-400 Raptor Strikes, huge chunky Flanking Strikes. It feels pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I will say in Classic WoW, there are a lot of things catered to help out melee DPS. I mean, you have the strength of Earth Totem coming from Shamans. You have Battle Shout coming from Warriors. You have Wild Strikes coming from Druids now. All these different buffs. I mean, the epic two-handed swords coming into play. There's a lot of things that really help melee. I feel like Survival Hunter can only proceed to get better, as opposed to Range Hunter. I feel like it's going to slowly degrade over time unless they make some overall changes. But what do you think they can do to improve maybe Melee Hunter, bring them back up? Because we have seen them drop significantly. We'll show you on the screen right now with the logs over the last week or so due to the nerfs. What do you think they can do to help out this class spec and maybe bring it back up to that higher tier on the list?
Well, I will say what was even really keeping them up there on the tier was the Beast Mastery rune and just how strong pets have been, which, yeah, no, I know. They're definitely too strong. They needed the nerf. But as soon as those nerfs came in, you started seeing Survival go here to here to here. Now they're middle of the pack almost exactly middle of the pack.
And the sad thing is Hunter's never really brought crazy utility other than now having, you know, what is it? The Heart of the Lion. I mean, that's absolutely mandatory. So now it's like you're middle of the pack DPS. You only have Heart of the Lion, which all the other specs can get. So it's like, okay, we're in a little bit of a troublesome scenario. So what do you think they can do next phase to bring maybe a new rune, a new gameplay style? What do you think?
Well, I think they're going to need to give survival some sort of burst cooldown. On top of, they're going to need to allow all hunters in general, not just melee, but we're going to need to be able to put traps in combat. Certainly melee, you know, if you being able to drop an immolation trap would certainly help DPS a lot. You know, that and maybe one other, yeah, like a burst cooldown. Maybe something from like they gave survival hunters in Legion, for example, the Fury of the Eagle artifact ability, or what's in the talent tree now for Dragonflight. I think something like that could help a lot.
So where would you place right now as a survival hunter main? Where would you place them on this tier list?
I think they're safely a B. I think they're too good to be C, and because of Heart of the Lion, even if their DPS was a little bit lower, they would stay B. But they're middle of the pack damage, and they bring a buff that's pretty much required if you're Horde.
I agree. I just think survival needs something a little bit more to say, hey, there's a reason to bring my spec in particular. Maybe some sort of debuff like they have in retail or something. Overall, though, I think they're in a pretty good spot other than the nerfs. The sixth round of nerfs Hunters have received since launch. But, you know, speaking about that, we also have Marksmanship Hunter, which on day 1 was receiving nerfs of the Season of Discovery launch. Literally, less than 24 hours later, Explosive Shot was getting tuned as well as some other things. As a Marksman Hunter player, for a very, very many years, doing many of the achievements and great things in PvP. What do you think they are right now? How are they? What can they do to improve? What can be better from this spec?
Problem with Marksmanship Hunters right now is they kind of just go very fast, and unless your guild has incredibly fast clear times, it doesn't matter if you take the Master Marksman rune, you're going if the fight goes longer than about a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, even then also, you're once again taking that Beast Mastery rune because it's just too strong, right? Or are you not?
When you have bad gear, yes, once you get better gear, it's better to take Chimera shots. But once again, it goes down to if your guild has slow kill times, you're going Beast Mastery. If they are fast, yeah, you go Chimera.
Yeah, and I bet something like that doesn't feel good. I mean, having to take a Beast Mastery rune, and then you also have the really clunky rune designs of like Lone Wolf not being on a good spot, and then you're also, you know, battling within yourself whether to take Explosive Shot or Chimera Shot, and then Master Marksman. It feels like it's not great rune design placement. I know you've mentioned in the past maybe combining Lone Wolf and Master Marksman maybe into one rune. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Like, you actually lose damage taking Lone Wolf. That does more than 15% damage, with or without Beast Mastery rune.
That's crazy.
Even with or without talents, because now that the fact that pets scale,
not good.
It's literally just a DPS loss unless they buff Lone Wolf, or yet, like you said, give it the Master Marksman to where it reduces mana cost. There's no world where you could take that.
Yeah, I think honestly, nerfing it from that 25% pre-launch to 15%, you know, forcing you to have a choice between the other runes, it just doesn't feel good. I know we've mentioned in our videos previously to either combine it or just buff it all together. It's just really, really bad. What do you think they should add coming into next phase? What are you looking for? Maybe for some PvE abilities, maybe talent changes, anything to make Marksman feel like its own spec rather than almost piggybacking off of Beast Mastery in a way.
For Marksmanship in particular, they're going to need something like a trap launcher, proc maybe a lock and load, give them a lock and load talent so they could get instant aim shots or explosive shots that cost no cooldown or no mana. Something like this, but they have to have some sort of proc that could help them stay a little bit more mana efficient and do a little bit more damage, because at the end of the day, mana is a problem. I know we're only level 25 and have very tiny mana pools. Also, now we're casting more abilities than ever before if you're trying to play Marksman. Once again, unless you have insanely fast clear times. Now, if you have a guild where, you know, you have 30, 40-second kill times, yeah, Marksmanship pumps. It's probably, I would say, in that regard, if you have a guild that good, you're an S tier.
Yeah, I agree. I think Marksman's pretty good. I think the damage is still viable to where your aim shots hit pretty damn hard. And if your guild has a fast clear time, you're going to be fine on the mana end right now. I do think it's A tier. You bring Heart of the Lion still. Your damage is great. I just think they need to give me something for Marksman to really allow me to keep pumping those shots more than anybody. Overall, though, I think Marksman is in a pretty good spot. Next up, we do have Fury Warrior. One thing right off the bat about Warrior is that Arms is actually using dual wield, while Fury right now is actually trying to use two-handers, but it's just not really going too well, so they're stuck trying to use single-minded Fury with not really a lot of hit. We'll talk a little bit more about Arms in a second, but really with Fury Warrior, you're missing so much hit to make it even viable, and single-minded Fury, you're just not getting enough value out of it. So it feels really clunky, you're missing a lot, you're not really generating a lot of rage. This spec doesn't really even come online until later on with you know, things like Flurry, Death Wish, Bloodthirst, dual wield spec for the offhand damage. So overall, I think it's in an okay spot at best. But once again, if you're rocking a DPS warrior, mostly you're going to be going Arms. So what do you think they can do to maybe bring Fury Warriors back in line to make people want to play them, or maybe improve them in next spec? I know the obvious thing would be like, oh, grab Titan's Grip, maybe increase Battle Shout attack power, enhance it even more. I'm just not really sure what they can even do to help this spec until you hit really late game and start getting a bunch of hits.
Fury has always been, it's just one of those ones where even in regular Classic, it doesn't come online, and certainly not dual wield Fury, until you have a certain, like you said, a certain amount of hit, but then a certain amount of gear.
Yeah, also, and people primarily use Fury to tank rather than DPS too, because, you know, you get so much Fury and bonuses and combat enhancements from taking critical strikes or just damage in general. So people right now are even rocking Fury tank to speed run these raids, either that or a Retribution Paladin, and they're speed running by doing stuff like that. So I don't know. I think coming into the next phases, they will scale a little bit better. Do I think they will be better than Arms? I'm not sure. I think that's really going to entirely come down to what the rune situation is looking like. The pendulum swing rotation of Arms is working and looking into the next phase.
I would say what it depends on is, imagine we go into the next raid and half the fights are mechanical fights where Deep Wounds is no longer working. That would make Fury have a little bit more value than Arms would in that scenario. What's really holding Arms above Fury right now is a couple of things. One, the overpower talent making it crit, and the Wrath of the Lich King Deep Wounds they gave him.
It's ramping out of control. If you look at the logs right now, it's their first or second topmost DPS other than their basic melee attacks, and everything else is a small percentage other than that. So they don't even need to really land hits or melee attacks to generate rage. Deep Wounds is literally carrying all their damage, so it's a very, very weird place. Overall, though, I would personally place Fury on the B tier. I would place it slightly below Melee Hunter, simply because they don't really bring much utility other than their shout. We're going to see how their tanking ability is coming in the next phase. I know Warriors absolutely love Fury tanking, but that's where I would place that as well. And then to talk about Arms just a little bit, because I know we were discussing it, the whole build and spend, you know, pendulum swing of Consumed by Rage is a really fun rotation right now. And if you know what you're doing with a Warrior, or have some experience with Warrior in general, you know that right now this rotation for Warrior is more fun than they've had in Classic, in BC, and maybe even potentially Wrath. I'm talking to a lot of Warriors right now. They absolutely love it. You have these major burst windows where you pair everything all at once you hit that 80 rage window, and it just, you're dumping rage really fast, you're dealing big crits. It is really, really fun stuff, man. I would say the only thing to really make Arms feel better, I don't know, that whole offhand dagger thing, it just feels a little weird to me. Not using that epic sword and then instead using a 120 speed dagger that has spell damage on it. I don't know, it doesn't really feel right from a class fantasy and really, I guess, playstyle perspective. It's just weird, am I right? Am I crazy here?
Yeah, visually it looks off. It's weird, but
I mean, they're the #1 DPS in the game. It's as simple as that. There's nothing about it that's going to change it. Right now, Arms Warrior with Deep Wounds. I shouldn't even say Arms Warrior. Deep Wounds is #1 DPS in the entire game. It is amazing. Arms Warrior is S tier. I'm hoping next phase, they maybe implement something cool, like something for... Give me a reason to use a big two-handed weapon, like having sudden death or something to really get some massive execute windows in there, you know? I don't think it's fun for people to use that offhand, super fast dagger play style. It feels a little weird to me, but I don't know. Hopefully they start implementing some stuff like that, maybe some more rage generation so they can do those build and dump windows a little bit faster. Moving on next, we have the last Hunter spec, which Lance once again have some very good experience with. Beast Mastery Hunter. This is the most nerf spec. Every week since launch, it's pretty much been a nerf. This is round 6 of Beast Mastery.
Round 7 coming soon.
Maybe round 7 coming soon. So talk to me a little bit about the start leading into where it is now, and then maybe talk to me about what we can do to make the spec feel a little bit better. Maybe talking about what about some other rotation options. I know I don't want to keep on bringing up retail stuff, but they have the whole barb shot mechanic in retail. Is that something that would be cool and classic? Bring it up.
I don't think barb shot should come anywhere near classic. Maybe something like a op frenzy or something like that, but no, let's leave that out of it. What really changed BM and allowed it to shine was obviously the rune. Yes, they allowed pets to start scaling more with the hunter, which they never did in classic, really. That is really putting pets on a high level. Also, I know everyone wants to complain about the lightning breath on the wind serpents. It was a funny thing where you just get that new rank of lightning breath at level 24 on top of all the scaling that the hunters are getting, and then the beast mastery rune. And then before, it was also scaling with the kill command.
Dude, I mean, we were at one point I was making videos, these updates and news videos, and I was showing on there that I was getting hit from non-crit lightning breaths for 250, 300 damage in PvP. Like, dude, that's like a third or fourth of my health in one lightning breath, and it's from range, and they could use 3 of them in about a matter of 5 to 6 seconds. It is insane. I do think it needed to be tuned, but now I think it's getting almost to the point where it's getting a little bit out of control, the amount of tuning they're doing. I know they're trying to measure, you know, put the whole measuring stick out there of, okay, how much is too much, and they're trying to feel it out, but I don't know.
They're preparing for next phase because PM doesn't even really have any of its great talents yet.
Yeah, I mean, you have their stun, you have Bestial Wrath. I mean, you also have Broken Tooth to get, as well as other really crazy pets that are going to come into the game. I mean, I think BM's going to get absolutely out of control. My vote right now for BM is A+. I do think it's ahead of Marksman right now. The damage, it's so user-friendly, it's simple, it's very straightforward.
I think it goes to, you could fit a BM in any raid group and it's going to excel, like, and it'll be fine. Yeah. You know, it's going to do its 150, 200 DPS, whether you're in a good group, whether you're in a bad group, it's very consistent. Literally, you just don't have to deal with any mechanics. You don't have to deal with a rotation at all. You auto shot and press multi-shot. You want a melee weave, great, it could add some DPS, but 90% of BM hunters aren't doing that. They're just sitting back and they're happy. Now, I don't think BM Hunters should ever be this strong when you're that easy of a class to play. Man, thank goodness they did tune it, because if they didn't next phase, if people were already complaining, wow, wait until you got an Intimidation stun into a Bestial Wrath and then into all of that. No.
Imagine all those percentage amplifiers on your runes stacking with Bestial Wrath on top of the other talents you get near the end of the tree with, like, Lightning Breath, or maybe even just a 1.2 attack speed Broken Tooth, or what is it, 1.0, 1.1, something like that.
It's fast attack speed.
Yeah, it's so fast to where you can't get a cast off. It's oppressive. I think something did have to be done, but we are going to have to see how it comes next phase. Moving on now to the red-headed stepchild of Rogue DPS. We got Mutt Rogue spec. I mean, listen, man, this is a spec that I main in retail for many, many years, and I think it's a really cool spec. Oh, no, retail. I think it's a really cool spec, but right now, it's very, very clunky right now. It's missing so many things that make Mutt Rogue actually good, because, you know, you use Mutilate, you get 2 combo points, 60 energy. Use it again, you get 2 combo points, and then you're at this weird middle ground where, like, I don't want to spend another 60 energy on getting a 5th combo point, so I guess I have to use my combo points on a 4 out of 5. It just doesn't feel good to ever use 4 out of 5 combo points in any situation. You know, next phase, you get stuff like Sealed Fate. To when you crit with Mutilate, you get an extra combo point, or maybe 2 if you crit with both of the attacks. And then also Deadly Brew is going to get enhanced like crazy in the Assassination tree. You get a little bit more energy. Next phase, I see them being way better than they are now. I think they're okay at best. We'll talk a little bit more about Combat Rogue. Right now, I'm going to place Assassination Rogue at B tier. They're kind of whatever. I'm hoping coming into next phase, they give Mutilate Rogues something to sort of snapshot their damage, to really try to get them to use abilities like Rupture instead of just spamming Envenom every single time. I always hated in Wrath of the Lich King, you were just Mutilate spamming and then Envenom, and that was it. You were getting your poison damage, right? It was just so boring to see. So I really hope they have something to snapshot their damage, or maybe give them cut to the chase, so when they use a combo point finisher, it at least keeps up their slice and dice or something. Something interesting, but
I think Rogue is always at its best when it has little things involved in it, whether it's procs or something to make the gameplay a little less static. When it's just, okay, I'm going to do my combo point generator this many times, and then I'm going to do my finisher. And it's almost like robotic. You could just do it.
Boring.
That is horrible. That's when Rogue's at its weakest.
Believe it or not, though, believe it or not, a lot of people love that straightforward gameplay style with Rogue. They are die hard for it. I don't blame them. I have a Rogue level 25 in Season of Discovery. I'm raiding. I got some great gear on. I'm playing Mutt and Saber/Rogue. But overall, I do think it's a lot boring than what it has the potential to be. Like kind of how it became in Cataclysm, where you get a lot of different mechanics and really, really interesting procs and stuff like that. But overall, I think Mutilate Rogue is a B-. I don't think it's anything great. It doesn't bring anything particular. I do really wish it has something specific that would really make you want to bring specifically a Mutilate Rogue. Maybe like an increased expose armor to where it's better than Sunders or Homoculi. Something overall, but I think it's okay at best.
Speaking of next phase, I think it's actually going to be worse than it is now next phase because of, once again, mechanicals. Any of those bleed dot
that's
specs.
a big one, man. Those bleed specs, dot specs, all that poisons. They're almost intentionally targeting Assassination Rogue with that one. Mechanics are immune to bleeds, and they're immune to poison. So we're going to have to see. That's another hot topic coming up in the next few weeks to see how Blizzard handles that sort of situation, because Arms Warrior with deep wounds, you won't see it near the top of the DPS. You won't. The nature damage resistance is so high. Elemental and enhancement will be gutted. A lot of these specs out there are going to be really, really pruned if that's the case. So we're hoping it's not going to be something. Moving on, though, we do have the Fire Mage. This is definitely, I will say openly, right off the bat, this is the strongest mage spec right now. I think without a doubt, it is a very strong spec. I don't think it's anything really to write home about just yet. From the rune standpoint, with Living Flame doing some great AoE damage. You have Living Bomb for AoE damage to proc Ignite on all the enemies if there's an adds in the fight. Then you also have Burnout for 15% passive crit. I mean, critting on Fire Mage is everything. You get those big, juicy Ignite procs. You get a nice Pyro Blast before the fight. You prep it up, get it cooking. It's good. It's a fun spec. It's definitely better than Frost, and it's stronger than Arcane right now. We'll talk about Frost in a second. But Fire's in a good place. I think Fire is really solid. And I do think they're going to be way better next phase. And I do think they will be the strongest mage spec next phase. Do you think Arcane might be better?
Yeah. Listen, the thing about Fire right now, it has a lot of great tools already at its disposal that the other two mage specs don't have. And I'm not saying I think Frost is ever going to be the PvE god in Season of Discovery. I'm pretty sure it will be the worst spec for mage for PvE the whole way through.
I think so too.
But I don't think Fire's going to reign supreme for long. It is the best right now. There's no denying that.
Arcane, maybe with a lot of intellect and a big juicy mana pool, and maybe some new runes that maybe amplify your arcane missiles even more, dumping those charges. It might be something really to not mess around with. It might be something truly, truly insane. I still think the problem with Arcane, and we'll talk about it in a second, is that it's kind of doing that piggyback thing that Hunter does. It's using Living Flame for damage, it's using Burnout for damage, and then you have Arcane Blast.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really even feel like Arcane in a way. I don't know, that's something that that Arcane is definitely, I'm hoping they'll improve upon, but Fire Mage, I think it's in a very good spot. I think coming into next phase, I really hope they do something with Fire Mage, maybe to have, I don't want to say instant Pyroblasts, because I think that's so cliche, you know, I think that's obvious. Maybe they mix it up and do something where each consecutive crit in a row or each crit that you have builds up to increase your next Fire Blast damage and makes it do AoE and explode or something. I want something unique with Fire. I want them to feel cool. I want them to feel good to use, but I don't want them to just do that cookie cutter, okay, instant Pyroblast.
Yeah.
Even though we both love it.
I'd be interested to see what real Fire Mage mains in Discovery want. I don't imagine a lot of them not wanting the hot streak coming in.
Hot streak is so fun.
I mean, it's just so iconic. And I know I don't want to just keep reusing the same abilities we have, but damn, it would be pretty cool to have hot streak.
It's fun, dude. I mean, it's fun. I don't care what anyone says,
or maybe they could listen, this is Season of Discovery. I don't think we need, and I know it's classic still, but don't need such static rotations where everything is always the same. I don't think every caster should just be casting one ability.
Listen, it's a seasonal thing. It's classic, but it's a classic plus, and it's seasonal. I don't mind, and this may be just me and Lance out here, I don't mind if they experiment with crazy stuff. I love that they did it with Living Flame, Homoculi, all these different specs coming into the game. We all loved it. You guys play it too. Metamorphosis being a tank spec. I love some variety, something new, something different. I'm even an advocate for never before seen stuff. Just throw it at me. Let's see what happens. That's why I'm really excited. They mentioned something about a two-handed enhanced spec coming in the next phase. We'll talk about that later. I'm really excited for that, so I agree with you on this one, Lance. I think Fire overall is in a good place. I will say, I think it's a B+.
We'd say, I'd say B+. I'd say it's a B+ or low A. It's a B+.
I think it's B+. There is one other caster left that is above them that we do have to talk about, and I don't think Fire deserves to be.
No, just kidding.
We'll talk about that later. B+ on the Fire Mage. It's a good spec overall. You got some decent utility control if there's ads. Big AoE burst damage, Living Bomb for AoE. It's really, really solid. Moving on now to by far the worst spec in Season of Discovery. The big dumpster. Send help, Frost Mage. Every single week and every single day on the logs, it is the bottom of the tier. Frost Mage is just bad. The rotation is super boring. You're spamming Frostbolts. You don't really get a lot of procs. It just doesn't feel good. And the class doesn't even come online until mid-level 30s, 40. It doesn't even come online. It doesn't feel good. You're missing your Shatter, which increases the freaking critical strike damage. You have Winter's Chill, which is your damage that stacks over time for chilling enemies. It doesn't feel good. It's bad. It's boring. The damage is low. You're in this weird spot where your Frostbolt, your next rank is at level 26.
Yeah.
It is really, really bad. And this is one of the things we're talking about when it comes to casters versus physical damage dealers, is that casters have such a big crutch if they don't get their next spell rank right before that level cap. And I'm hoping that's something they can address, whether it be adding spell books of increasing the ranks inside of the raids or quest lines to do something with that. But right now, Ice Lance doesn't deal enough damage with the proc. Frostbolt doesn't deal enough damage. They don't have Cone of Cold. There's nothing unique to this spec to bring anything. I mean, maybe next phase they can have Ice Shards, kind of how they do in retail, where the more Frostbolts you cast, you get Ice Shards above your head, and maybe you can spend it on something big, like a Glacial Spike, or maybe a brand new ability like an AoE Frost Explosion, maybe Frost Bomb or something. I don't know, anything.
Or something to make Ice Lance not be crap.
Yeah, I mean, the only way Ice Lance is not going to be crap is simply Shatter. That's it. The critical strike damage, because the only way you use Ice Lance is when you get the proc, and then when you use the proc, it doesn't even have big damage. It's crap. It's just not good.
It's a waste of a room. They didn't give them any of the things to make it.
I'm telling you right now,
pressing,
though,
yeah.
we're laughing at Frost now. Next phase for PvP, we're gonna be hating Frost Mage.
Sure.
I'm letting you know now. Well, that's another video we'll talk about for another time. But Man, Frost, you gotta send help. This class needs help on a rune design standpoint. The middle ground between spells not being activatable and not coming online, that's an ugly standpoint. They need something like Brain Freeze for maybe an instant Frostfire Bolt, or even maybe if you want to even just say F it and just say instant Fireball that then counts as a Frost spell. I don't care. This class needs something. It needs help. The Frost Mage player base, it's little as it is, and they're begging for some help. Overall, this class desperately needs it. Moving on now to one of my favorite classes ever in the history of WoW, Retribution Paladin. Big Retribution Paladin. Listen, this class has had a complete makeover. What's that movie with the girl? She gets the makeover. She was the nerd, and she became the super pretty girl. What was that?
I don't know.
I don't even know either, but it's a freaking movie. They got the whole revamp, man. They got the eyeshadow, the makeup. They're completely new people. 180 degrees. We got a brand new rotation. Crusader Strike, Judgment, Divine Storm, Exorcism. The damage is big. You can even Ret Paladin tank and just face tank everything. Get a bunch of heals. You're pretty solid as a spec. I will say, though, that on the logs, they have been dropping down slowly but surely, which doesn't feel that good. I didn't think Ret was going to be the top of the DPS. I did think they were going to be good, but I think they're really going to come online come next phase. You get things like Vengeance for the big percentage damage increase, as well as two-handed weapon spec. Potentially, their mana issues might get solved. Maybe they bring in Judgment of the Wise. So when you use your Judgment, you get a nice chunk of your mana bar back. Long duration fights, Ret Paladin struggle, similar to Hunter. Short duration fights, they excel. Divine Storm is great. It gives a bunch of healing. I think when I use it in a raid, I heal everyone for about 150, 200 damage if there's enough enemies around me, which is insane healing. Overall, they're in a pretty good spot. You have your blessings, your average or above average damage, I would say. And overall, the class has a fun rotation. The only thing I will say, and this is the point that we keep going back to, we just don't want it to go back to the Wrath of the Lich King playstyles. We got the Crusader Strike, Divine Storm, Exorcism. What's next? They're going to give us instant flash of lights to heal ourselves? Nobody wants that, even though it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but if I want that, we'll just go play Wrath. Am I right? I mean,
Ret's biggest benefit, they bring so much. It's invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, you got bops, you got blessings, you got the best defensive in the game to survive any scenario out there. I mean, you could do some crazy combos, even if you want to go Ret and get Divine Sacrifice. I think it's called Divine Sacrifice, where you absorb all the damage that's going on in your raid to put it onto you. I mean, very valuable utility. It's insane, and I think it continues to grow with the utility as the phases go on. Ret will always be good. It will always be wanted, and now that in Classic it has some good damage, Ret will always be needed.
Yeah, and I think there's a case to be made. I think Ret is either going to have to go in the IA above Hunter.
Yeah.
You can make a case that it's a low S.
I agree.
Right now, at least on a Lion side, just like a Feral Druid, you probably don't want to go into a raid without at least one Paladin. I mean, with Ret being the only really good Paladin.
Let's put it this way. Would you rather have a Ret or any Shaman spec? You have a Ret Paladin. Would you rather have a Ret or any of these specs down here? Arcane, Boomy, Ellie, Affliction.
The problem is now, Shaman in particular is less value than Ret because of Wild Strikes.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to touch on in a minute. Overall, though, I would say heading into the next phases, the one thing we don't want to see with Ret is a copy-paste arena of Wrath of the Lich King. We don't want there to just be the same old, same old. I do think that we need to address their mana issues, but honestly, I would really like for them to do like a Fallen Death Knight sort of theme in a way for Paladin to have that option of DPS. Imagine that, with maybe a Corrupted Ashbringer, and then maybe lore-wise you can sort of cleanse it. Maybe have something to do with Xalatath. I don't know.
Hear me out. What if they did this for Paladin? At maybe in the level 50 bracket, they give you the option to kill your Paladin and become a Death Knight and bring Death Knight into SOD that way.
Man. I love Speculate, man. I love to just go off on the
this is tier list. Not anymore, baby. We're speculating. I know in the data mine files, we did see Howling Blast in there and things like that. I would, however, like how they thought they were going to do in original Wrath of the Lich King, where you would have to kind of kill your character to become a Death Knight.
That's cool.
I really do think that would be interesting. For me, That would be cool. Also, I think it would curve the amount of Death Knights we would have when they came out, instead of there being 90% of the player base becoming them.
Could you imagine
that?
maybe
People would level an alt to do so, but...
And even, like, going into Naxxramas and doing all those things, it would feel cool in Classic as a Death Knight. Obviously, this is pure speculation, but back to the tier list, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Ret Paladin. They've shown them the most love out of any other class spec in the entire game with their class quest, their rune quest, the rune design, the amount of attention. Overall, though, I think Paladin is definitely an A+ for now. We will have to see how this tier list pans out. It might be a low S, but for me right now, it is an A+ without a doubt. Nothing lower than that. We do have Arcane Mage. This one gets pretty interesting. The reason being is that the rotation for this class is very, very fun. You know, you do that almost similar to Warrior playstyle, where you get those builders, and then you spend on something like Arcane Missiles. The only problem, the difference with Arcane, is that the Arcane Charge stack depletes after, I think it's 5 or 6 seconds. And it's very easy, if you're trying to dodge mechanics or reposition in fights, to lose all the stacks. It sucks. On top of it, Arcane Missiles, if you try to cast it, you're stuck in that location. I think it's for 2.5 or 3 seconds. So it doesn't feel good, and it's very clunky in that aspect. I think, like you were saying earlier, once you get some more intellect, once you get some more mana, you maybe get arcane power, and you start pumping some arcane blast out there, you can deal some insane damage. We saw what it was like in Burning Crusade. We saw what it was like in Wrath of the Lich King. The damage for Arcane is always some of the highest in the game, but it comes down to how much mana they can sustain. How can they, you know, keep that mana bar up? It sucks right now that Evocation's on an 8-minute cooldown. Yeah, I would really love for there to be a rune maybe in place that would have like a 2-for-1, where it would make Evocation a 3-minute cooldown, and then it also gives you 4 arcane charges over the duration. So it would give you a nice dump. You would dump all your mana with the arcane missiles, regenerate your mana, give you all your arcane charges. I'm ready back to go blasting.
Well, another thing the mage is kind of missing right now is the mana gem.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to help a lot, you know, when you could be drinking mana pots and mana gem and evocate, and maybe potentially start paying your druids to give you those innervates. You know, and also other things that I'm predicting will come, some more replenishment style runes, whether it's from something like maybe a shadow in the future, but there's just not a lot of things to help the Arcane Mage keep pumping. But I personally predict, even right now, they're what, middle to upper middle of the pack DPS already. Once they get rolling, certainly once those mana pools get big enough, Arcane Mage will rise to the top. Right now, I would personally put them at a B to an A. I would say if we put Fire Mage in B, I would put them below Fire.
I think
above Survival, I think.
You think they're above Survival? Because Survival brings that 10% buff, and right now, Survival is dealing a little more damage.
Okay, so in that case,
I would say that they're above Fury, because Fury just doesn't deal enough raw DPS. It's missing too much. Mutt is missing too many things. I would say Arcane is right below Survival. I think it's in a decent spot. I think it's dead center smack middle of the pack in terms of everything, whether it be utility, casting, mana replenishment, and sustain, damage, all that sort of thing. I really hope they do something to really help them keep up their stacks so it doesn't fall off, whether it be, you know, having an arcane orb or Touch of the Magi to instantly generate 4 arcane charges, something interesting. But overall, Arcane's in a pretty decent spot, right at the B tier.
Yeah, I think B's good.
Moving on, we have Balanced Druid, the chicken spec.
Not a chicken yet, but...
Yeah, not a chicken yet, but Balanced Druid was a big concern for a lot of people heading into Season of Discovery. I do think they got a lot of love, but for some reason, man, I don't know what the problem is. It just doesn't look right on the logs. They just don't deal enough damage. It feels like Star Surge is amazing. That buff where they buffed it, I think it was 187% the other patch. And it feels great now. And their DPS went from like 70, 60 DPS to now like in the mid-hundreds. And it's good. But anything other than that feels crappy to use. Moonfire doesn't feel good. Sunfire isn't good enough to get Wild Growth out of the way, because Wild Growth is just so strong. It doesn't cost that much mana. It heals everyone in your party pretty much to like half health. It's amazing. Moonfire is kind of clunky. You're never casting Starfire right now. I think next phase, once they start getting their things like Moon Fury and Vengeance to be able to get that big crit damage and that big just damage amplifiers overall, that flat 10% damage increase, and then you get Moonkin form, I think they'll have enough to make a real run at being a strong caster DPS spec. Right now, though, I'm not too sure. What do you think?
And this is going to be more so for Alliance Druids. I don't know why you would ever bring a balanced Druid over a Feral.
Yeah, I agree.
In what world are you
Never.
ever going to bring a balanced Druid over a Feral that could bring Wild Strikes?
Never.
You have to take that into account. This is not a DPS tier list, because if it was, then we would just literally be showing you logs. You can't. You can't. Now, in Horde, when Shamans come in and they could drop that Wind Fury Totem, maybe it's a little bit different, and then maybe you could get some value out of like that Moonkin aura with the crit for the spell crit or whatever it is, but as of right now, their damage, subpar.
Yeah.
Their utility, subpar.
Yeah, I mean, they have rebirth. That's it. They don't don't have
Wild
wild strikes.
Feral Druid brings that.
Yeah, and they also don't have the spell hit from Boomkin yet. So you don't need one. You don't need one.
No.
And you know what the craziest thing is? A Restoration Druid can have all their healing, and then they can grab Star Surge.
Yeah.
You don't even and they're gonna do all their damage they normally do because they're already casting Rat to get the healing touches instant anyways. So it's like, from a Boomkin strictly design standpoint, you don't need a pure Boomy right now. They don't come online. The talent tree isn't well designed until mid-30s into 40. It sucks, but it is what it is. I would say Boomkin is at best C+, at best tier. Shit, I might even put them in the send help tier.
They're
because
almost there.
Boomkin is at this weird place right now where I'd rather bring a Feral if I have to bring a Druid. And I definitely bring a Resto over a Boomy because they deal the same damage, and they also give way more healing. So right now, I would say C- is the Boomy.
You can leave them at a C, but they're a one-trick pony right now, and that they're one trick. You don't even need to be balanced to bring. I don't see a reason to bring one.
Yeah, it's not very good. And even in a dungeon environment, they don't deal AoE. I don't know. They're great levelers, but other than, I don't know, where this is a pure PvE raid tier list, but right now I don't love them, and they do need help.
They are borderline send help.
Yeah, they're borderline send help. Talking about another one that's borderline send help, we got the Elemental Shaman. This is one of my favorite personal specs that I've played for many years in World of Warcraft. Right now, I'm just gonna be flat out with it. They're a C- class. It's without a doubt. Elemental Shaman is struggling right now. And I would say the reason for that is because, once again, this is one of those caster classes like Shadow Priest, Boomkin, that don't come online until mid-30s. I know in regular classic World of Warcraft vanilla, you don't level as Shadow Priest. You level as Wand, Spec, and Spirit Tap. I know for a fact you don't level as Boomkin. You level as Feral, and then you don't even really level as Boomkin even when you get there. You just don't. It's just so poor. Same thing goes for Elemental. You level as Enhance. Once again, one of those specs that's missing a lot of things. You're missing... Right now, it's still casting a 3-second cast filler spell that hits for 75 damage. I mean... It is so bad to play. The only saving grace about this spec right now is Lava Burst and the totems. What do you think right now about Elemental?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. It's got, once again, just like Balance, it's a one-trick pony. It has its Lava Burst. Overload right now, with the fact that your spells other than Lava Burst really just, it's just not worth it. Also, Lightning Bolt's mana cost for its damage is poor.
Oof. You have to think of it like this. I was actually crunching some numbers. Lightning Bolt does about a third or a quarter of the damage as Lava Burst, and its mana cost is like tripled or something crazy like that. So it's like, oh my god, it almost hurts to cast Lightning Bolt on a 3-second cast, and then you get these weird situations where you proc a clear casting, but then your Lava Burst comes off cooldown. So like, I have to use Lava Burst because it's priority number 1. It's my hardest hitting spell, so I'm using it on a spell that doesn't even cost a lot of mana. It needs a lot of help right now, and I think it will get some help coming in the next phase with Chain Lightning to use with clear casting. You also get the 2-second cast on the Lightning Bolt, and then you also get 100% damage on your critical strikes. I mean, that's going to be insane with the Overload. I do think this class has a lot of potential. You got the Mana Spring Totem for your party. I do think Elemental will be heading in the right direction coming up soon. It's like one of those teams that they suck this year, but they got a lot of young guys, and they're gonna be better next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of potential here. I'm hoping coming into the next phases, maybe they can give them something like a fulmination, like they have in other iterations of WoW, where as you cast Lava Burst or Lightning Bolt, you get like these Lightning Shield charges, and then it consumes all of them on your Earth Shock, stacking up to 9. So you get like a big Earth Shock window, or maybe even add like Elemental Blast to be used once you get 9 stacks or something. I don't know. Something interesting, something different. Don't just get me, and don't get me wrong, it's good for the game and it's good for the group to give me that Totem of Wrath for the party hit and the party, what is it? Party hit and spell damage, I think? And damage, we'll have to check on that, but I don't want Ellie to be in this weird space where they're once again just group spell buffers or physical damage dealer buffers. I want them to kind of have their little bit own niche of damage in a way. We'll have to see. But right now, Elemental, C- tier, very on the borderline of send help if the rune situation does not look good next phase. I don't see him competing with classes that we're about to talk about. Speaking of close to C tier and send help, another one, once again, another caster DPS, Affliction Warlock. Affliction, it's very simple. I would never bring an Affliction Warlock over a Destruction Warlock. It's very simple. I mean, your dots don't deal enough damage. You don't have something in the Affliction kit like Malefic Grasp to double proc the dots or even refresh them so you don't have to keep recasting. It's very clunky right now. What do you think?
Well, dots in vanilla are not designed to be good DPS. They can't crit.
Yeah.
And certainly at this level, you don't have the spell power to really make them worth it, unless you get one of like a dot that's a rune, like maybe Shadow has with the Void Plague, where it's okay, it does some good damage. But if you don't have that, your base class dots,
they're lackluster, man.
Lackluster.
And once again,
horrible.
you're also praying to God that the rank situation, the spell rank situation, isn't clunky, and it's not like, okay, I'm at level 25, but I get my next rank of Corruption or Curse of Agony at level 26. Like, you could very well, and especially with Affliction, you have like 3 or 4 dots out there, and you're praying to God that, oh my God, hopefully next phase I get my new ranks at level 40 or level 38. And if you don't, you're a dead man. Affliction's in that really weird situation where it doesn't have a filler that is a rune, so it's struggling significantly as a caster. Frost Mage, great example. We have Elemental, a great scenario where it's the same thing. You don't have a filler as a primary DPS option. The only classes that we see with that are really performing well are Arcane Mage and Destruction Warlock. The only reason Fire's up there is because they have half their freaking kit, and they're already rocking and rolling with all their runes.
Yeah.
So
Affliction
is in a really weird spot. I'm hoping next phase they bring a rune that would sort of work as like Malefic Grasp, where it procs those dots and double dips on it, or something to I don't know, something to make the dots hit harder, or maybe crit, or even when they crit they refresh the duration, or something new, something interesting, something to spice it up, because as of right now, dude,
you're sitting there spamming 60 damage shadow bolts that take seconds to cast.
It's not good.
No.
It's not good. It needs a lot of work. It's filler spell. After you apply all the dots, we need something in desperate needs. I would put it in C-. Definitely the closest out of all of these on the send help. Shit. You think it might be in the send help category?
Yeah.
It doesn't bring much utility other than Hellstones and Soulstone. You don't have the debuffs yet.
It doesn't... Anything that it can bring, other spec can bring, and it's just
better
in every way right now.
Yeah, it's just better.
No, send help. Yeah, Affliction is send help.
And we're about to hit you
Frost,
guys. We're about to hit you guys with a very good reason why. Because we're talking about Destruction Warlock now. This class spec came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
No, listen, when we were talking about, when we saw all the new runes coming into play, we knew that Destruction was about to slap. We did videos on it, we discussed it, we did our research, we knew. Man, oh man, this class came out of nowhere. I didn't think it was going to be hitting as hard as it did now at the end of the phase. I thought it was just always going to stay on the bottom, but now, I mean, Incinerate is doing hundreds of damage per cast. It's a great filler. It amplifies your fire damage 24/7 practically because you're always spamming Incinerate. Immolate feels good to use. You have Shadow Burn for quick little cheeky hits on other mobs for some instant burst while you're running away from dodging mechanics. You have your Rain of Fire proccing your damage amplification for 40%. What is it? What's it called?
Fire.
Lake of Fire. I mean, Chaos Bolt, once you have everything up and running, is hitting for anywhere between 700 to 900 or 1,000 damage. It is whacking things. It is hitting super hard. The rotation is fun. It's engaging. You have great AoE damage next phase. You have good AoE damage now. You have a consistent DPS. You have great utility. This spec is kicking ass right now.
I'm excited to see what Hellfire is gonna do once you proc the Lake of Fire, and then you go and hit him with that.
Man, you want to talk about a brain dead AoE spec? You proc Lake of Fire and go do Hellfire. That's it, man. You're good. You're good. It's gonna be really interesting to see. I don't think this class needs much help right now. I'm very curious to see what they could possibly add for destruction. Do you have any ideas of something they would maybe add?
That's the obvious one. I think Havoc could be cool. No, it could be cool, and I know people are gonna hate it because it's a retail ability, but the Dimensional Rift could be cool.
I love that ability. I always loved it. It's a nice, hard cooldown. Cast and forget, big damage. You can do it on the move. You do it at the start of a fight. It hits hard.
I don't think
I always
should
like
give
that one.
3 charges like in retail, but I think maybe you give 1 charge, 1 minute cooldown,
or even something to proc it. Maybe if, like, I don't know, maybe if your Immolate does a crit, or when you use Shadow Burn and it crits, you have a chance to proc a Dimensional Rift proc where you can actually use it. Almost similar to how Overpower works for Warriors. It only procs under a condition, and you're able to use it when a certain condition applies. I think that'd be interesting, or something interesting. I think the rotation's fun. This is a very, very strong caster. I would put it in the A tier for sure. I don't think it's above Marksman or BM, personally. I don't think the damage is there just yet. It's very close. It has great utility. It has Soulstone, Health Stone.
It will be next phase.
Next phase, yeah. We'll talk about that next phase. But right now, Marksman does more damage. 10%
right now,
stats.
Better.
I think it's better. So Destruction, that's my vote right now for it. Next up, this is a personal favorite for Lance. A very long time main Shadow Priest here for many, many years. And he was very excited to see the direction they were going to take in Season of Discovery for Shadow Priest. But the truth is, he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. He didn't love all these mechanics, and I'm really interested to pick your brain and the audience to hear. Shadow Priest players out there, rise up. If you're here in the freaking video right now, leave a comment. Shadow Priest, rise up. Lance, talk to me about the situation with Shadow Priest. What's going on? What's the problem? Why aren't they doing anything?
I mean, I could tell from as soon as I saw the data mine of what the were going to be for Shadow, they didn't do anything to address Shadow's biggest problem in Classic.
Drumroll, please.
Which was mana. And I mean, can't cast your abilities. And then
it's so funny. You were talking about, Destruction Warlock with an infinite mana pool, a low casting Incinerate, almost nothing mana cost, even Chaos Bolt low mana, and then you got Shadow Priest. They literally can't do their rotation for more than 45 seconds at a time. You can't use it. You're out of mana so fast. It's crazy. Just crazy.
It's pretty bad when 90% of the Shadow Priest parses are all using penance.
Oh,
now.
So you mean to tell me, Shadow Priest players out there, they're going to hate me for this one. You mean to tell me the top parses for Shadow Priest aren't even Shadow Priest? They're actually just Smite Priest?
Well, yeah. Well, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. First off, now it's becoming to where if you want to get in your 99 parses for Shadow, I'm seeing a lot of people are starting to use Smite, Penance, Void Plague, and
Penance and Void Plague. That's your top DPS, and then you wand. Get that wand spec up, and you're rocking and rolling. It's sad right now. It's the sad thing about Shadow is that you don't even need Shadow Priest specifically because you can just grab Homunculi off of your healer, and you're still good to go. If you want to deal damage, you could still go as your healer with Void Plague and Penance and still be good to go. It's such a clunky scenario right now. Shadow Priest has got to be in the send help category. What would you do as a longtime Shadow Priest main, Lance? What would you do for next phase to give them something? I know a lot of people were mentioning for some reason Mind Spike. What would you bring to this class to help this class?
But Shadow needs, one, just like Affliction, it needs a way to make your dots crit. Otherwise, you're just going to be outscaled by everyone. We all know in Classic, what makes a lot of people strong is world buffs. And what do world buffs usually do? either make your hit go up or make your crit go up. Can't crit,
Yeah.
you're going to the dirt.
Yeah,
That's
trouble.
one. Number two, they need something like a Shadow Fiend to help with mana, or a Vampiric Touch, or they need to figure out a new way to help Shadow Priest with mana.
Yeah.
Because right now, can't do it. Your Shadow Ward Pain is taking like 20% of your mana.
That's
You
crazy.
can't do it. Then, can we not copy and paste Shadow Ward Death from other expansions? It's killing you. If you have enough spell power, it's literally killing you. You're casting it twice, and you have to either get healed and put strain on your healers, or you have to heal yourself and use your limited mana supply to heal yourself. That's another reason people are using Penance. It's low mana, and it doesn't kill you. Shadow right now is, my opinion, looking even more grim than Frost, because I could see that Frost will rise. Unless they give runes to really, really, really help Shadow, sure, it's going to get Shadow form, it's going to get darkness, it's going to get all of the things that Shadow's always
Shadow
got.
weaving.
Yeah, we'll get it Shadow weaving to help Warlocks, but guess what? Your Warlocks aren't even running Shadow anyway, so there goes that. Unless they could get
Shadow
mana.
Priest. Shadow Priest is in a very, very grim spot. This is one of those classes you gotta send help, Blizzard. This one needs help. Whether it be on a base design standpoint, whether it be on a rune standpoint, whether it be changing the dots to crit, give this class something. It is in desperate need of help and attention. This and Frost Mage are on the bottom of the tier list, or on the bottom of the logs every single week in and week out. It needs some help. Moving on to our next spec, we have the Combat Rogue. I'm just gonna say it right now. This class goes right. I think it actually goes behind Warrior for now. I mean, Warrior gives Battle Shout. It gives.
Overall, it's behind.
I think it's behind Warrior. It does some great damage, and its damage is less than Warrior still. But right now, Combat Rogue is in a very safe spot. I would say this is going to be the top DPS spec next phase. You have Saber Slash is a cast and forget 3-stack dot that annihilates bosses. You have your Deadly Brew, which it's 2 poisons at once. Cast and forget passive, don't gotta worry about anything. Your rotation from Season of Discovery to Classic WoW has not changed at all if you're playing Combat Rogue. Heading into next phase, it's gonna get even crazier.
That, once again, depends. If those mechanicals come in, everything that is invalidated.
Yeah,
And they are crap.
And I'm really hoping Blizzard does something to at least allow poisons and bleeds, whether it be having an engineering item that you shoot onto an enemy, something, because there's no way that we're going to be able to sit here and raid mechanical creatures and everything is going to get resisted constantly. The damage is going to be naturally low. It's not going to be fun. People want to play Classic. You want to know why? For big boy numbers and very straightforward raiding content. Yeah, okay. Then, I mean, if they don't do that, then we're missing Elemental Shaman. We're missing Combat Rogue. We're missing the Warriors. We're missing, I mean, Assassination. You're missing.
Will rise.
I mean, I don't know. Either way, though, this class is in a very safe spot. You have Sword Spec coming up. You have Adrenaline Rush. You have the extra weapon skill on your weapons as well. There's so many good talents for boss fights for Combat Rogue. Adrenaline Rush is absolutely insane. It's going to be the parsing king. I don't see Combat Rogue being anything less than top 3 in the next phase. I personally have it. It is my vote for the #1 DPS heading in the next phase, as long as nothing crazy happens with the whole mechanical situation. I'm not sure what this class really needs because it's already performing really, really well. I would say Rogue overall, from a Rogue standpoint, missing out on using a combo point finisher because you're swapping targets, that sucks. That always sucks. It never feels good. I think they also need something to use other than just spamming Envenom the entire time. That never feels really good as well. And it's going to be really tricky because you're not going to be able to get your Slice and Dice bonus next phase because you have to go get an Adrenaline Rush. So, are you going to be using Slice and Dice next phase? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what the best logs are going to be. But overall, Combat, man, absolutely in a fantastic, fantastic place. And last but not least, for some reason, I don't know how, but it's the Enhancement Shaman, my main. There's a lot to dive into about this one. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit short here. Shamans as a class don't really exist until level 30. You're missing so much of your kit. You're missing Wind Fury. You're missing Mana Tide Totem or Mana Spring Totem. You're missing a lot of really good talents. All their talents on all 3 trees right now are really bad. You don't get Flurry. You don't get the enhanced weapon imbuements. It's just really clunky. And I know heading into Season of Discovery, people like myself were really hoping they were going to do a 2-handed enhancement spec, because I didn't want to play dual wield playing Classic World of Warcraft. I want those big 2-handed Wind Fury crits, tons of big numbers on the screen flying around. But we all know that's not possible until level 30. I knew that. Everyone knew it. And if you're a Shaman player at all, you knew in the first phase they weren't going to be that good. But once again, you're in this really weird spot with enhancement right now where you just got 2 runes specifically for dual wield. You got your Lava Lash and your dual wield rune. Am I only going to get 1 rune for 2-handed enhancement next phase? Would it even be worth it? Like, what the hell is going to go on? This class is in a lot of trouble. It needs a lot of help. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. Its damage is mediocre. The utility now is very mediocre with Feral Druids bringing Wild Strikes. I don't know. Unless this class gets some really big changes with runes or maybe even basic ability changes, this class is going to be in a lot of trouble. It looks more grim than Elemental Shaman. I would really love maybe some sort of AoE debuff, sort of how they have with Crashing Thunder in retail. They do a nice little AoE Thunder ability, and maybe it can give a debuff, like maybe it increases the magic damage someone takes. Maybe you could bring me for that. I would love to help out my casters for something like that as well as putting me, maybe having mana for my healers if I'm not going to be in the melee group. Whatever it may be. So I don't know. Overall, though, I would put them in the C tier. I would put them above Boomy and Ellie right now, though, just because they deal more damage and have some pretty good utility. Their utility is what makes them so good, and they don't really bring anything at all right now. So hopefully next phase, that can get changed. I mean, I know you used to play Enhancement back in, what, Wrath for a little bit? Or something, Kata. I don't know. Hopefully, once again, I don't want them to just do the Wrath of the Lich King route where they just give us Maelstrom Weapon and you're casting lightning bolts. I want something different. I want something unique. Something to really mix it up. And if we can get 2-handed enhanced, rocking and rolling in PvE.
Primal Strike.
Yeah, anything. I mean, I think Storm Strike with maybe another attack for 2-handed enhanced, like you said, maybe Primal Strike. Or I know on the World of Warcraft Wowhead website, they had the Sundering. It's called the Sundering ability, where you smash your 2-handed weapon into the ground and it like breaks the earth and does a bunch of damage. I know people were talking about something like that, but once again, we're not going to know anything until the next couple of weeks. But I would say enhancements definitely in the C tier. I think it's fair to say. And honestly, I don't
at least for DPS.
I don't think with this list, I don't think I would change anything. I feel pretty good about all these options. Once again, me and Lance have been raiding for every single week, playing with every single class that you guys see on screen here. I mean, we've done it all. We got really high parses. We study the game day in, day out. We know what we're talking about. If you guys have a different opinion, by the way, let us know in the comment section below. If you guys are also here at the end of the video, let me get some comeback kids in the comment section below, just to see if any of you guys are still out there, man. Just to see. If you guys enjoyed this type of video, man, once again, let us know about it in the comment section below. We're going to be making another one of these tier list, breakdown prediction videos once we see the new runes coming out for phase 2. So hopefully that is in the next couple weeks. By the way, we got some very big news to announce very soon for you all. Some very big surprises for our community. It's going to be awesome, man. I hope you guys are excited. My name's Sky from the Comeback Kids.
My name's Lance.
I will see you guys in the next one.
Peace.